Okay. Sorry to online listeners. The microphone was not turned on by me. So, anyway, you had, I am sure, silent meditation instead of regular guided meditation. Let us begin the discussion on this biography of Sri Ramakrishna with our usual prayers as soon as they appear on the screen. Here they are. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadattatam Bhuvi Grananti Te Bhurida Janaha. Let us again think a little bit about the title of the book that the author has given, Sri Ramakrishna Leela Prasang. Sri Ramakrishna in his divine play. Here the translation is Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, which is fine, good. But one way to look at it could be that Sri Ramakrishna in the divine play, it is a divine play is going on, and in the play there is this part being played by this Sri Ramakrishna. The Sri Ramakrishna is a part. It is that part is having different, the different chapters, different scenes are there, and those scenes, they have a significance. Those scenes are being described as the different moods or bhava of Sri Ramakrishna, different roles of Sri Ramakrishna in this play, divine play. It is the Sri Ramakrishna as a little child. Sri Ramakrishna as God. God is not a child, doesn't become a child, but plays the role of a child. Like in a play, somebody takes up a role. It doesn't forget the identity, original identity. Like suppose Paul sitting there goes to play on the stage. Suppose he is playing Hamlet. Now he is Hamlet. He will show all the whatever happens in that Hamlet play. He will just enact that. While the play is going on, if somebody from the audience calls him, "Hey Paul," he won't answer, because then that will just break the play, disrupt it. So he is not Paul but Hamlet there. But he knows that he is Paul. Ultimately, like in the play, he is not going to commit a suicide like Hamlet, be getting so confused what to do, whether to live or die. He is showing all that emotions of Hamlet with great intensity. But he knows he is not the Prince of Denmark. He knows that he is not Hamlet. He is not actually undergoing any such thing. He is just Paul. So it is, and the play is over, and then he takes out all those costumes and everything, goes and resumes his other job. So it is, that is how the play, Sri Ramakrishna, the God is enacting this play through this body that we come to know as Sri Ramakrishna, and takes up these roles as a child. That is one volume here is dedicated to that. Then there is the volume which tells about how Sri Ramakrishna acted as a spiritual aspirant, sadhak bhava. Sri Ramakrishna as spiritual aspirant. Then there is these two volumes are for Sri Ramakrishna acting as teacher. Sri Ramakrishna as teacher. The two volumes are dedicated for this, because that is the main purpose of the advent of God in human form, to teach humanity what their goal is and what the way is. The goal and the way. That is how Jesus says, I am the goal, I am the way. Both are seen in the life of an incarnation of God. And thus, that is Sri Ramakrishna's own words, that he says nothing in his life is done except for giving that demonstration to others, for teaching others. All the actions are for teaching others. So therefore, this being the important aspect of his personality, this is described in two volumes. And we are in the process of seeing the second volume in today's class. For last many classes actually we have been reading this part, that Sri Ramakrishna as the teacher to various spiritual aspirants who have been mendicants, who have been already practicing, and then they meet Sri Ramakrishna as a fulfillment of their practice. We were seeing that there is the Bhairavi Brahmani. We also saw that although Sri Ramakrishna's teachership was always there, right from childhood, it started manifesting in a big and in a formal way after the advent of this Bhairavi Brahmani, his teacher in various tantric and devotional practices. So Bhairavi, when she arrived, as we have seen, Sri Ramakrishna was having these signs of various sickness, what would be termed as some pathology going on, and so needs to be treated properly by doctors. That was the understanding of the owner of that temple estate in Dakshineshwar, Mathur Babu. So he would spend lot of money for treatment of Sri Ramakrishna, taking him to various different well-known physicians of that time. So, but Bhairavi, she examined those symptoms, and then those she could understand that these symptoms are not from any physical disease. These are the signs of intense spiritual awareness that cannot be contained in the body. And so these signs are being seen on the body as an automatic expression of that intense awareness of being God, being divine. So, therefore, that love is an expression, rather the most palpable of oneness. And the oneness is the essence of what all experience as love. And so, Sri Ramakrishna was having that intense, tremendous, indescribable love for God as the very self, the very essence of everything. And that was bringing all these abnormal signs on his body. Abnormal because the definition or the understanding of normality is whatever most people have in their life, that is normal. And Sri Ramakrishna's was not like that, so abnormal. One actually, that is the etymology of this word abnormal. We consider abnormal means to be brought to normal by treating them and bringing them up in a way. Abnormal considered down, low. Yes, it is abnormal is not considered good. But abnormal actually is derived from above normal. They are more than normal. And so Sri Ramakrishna was abnormal in that sense. People cannot understand. Forget incarnation of God. Even the genius cannot be actually understood by society. They are discarded. They are not considered worthy of living in society. They are usually thrown out and so forth, because society is kind of having a mediocre mass. If you are going above, the society cuts you down. If you are below, the good part of it is that if you are below, society picks you up. So, it is the job of society. So, Sri Ramakrishna being thought of as below normal, society wanted to bring him up. But Bhairavi Brahmani, she saw that these are the signs not of any physical disease, but of heightened spiritual awareness, as have been described in the case of some other incarnations of God. So she could see the parallel. That is how the diagnosis also is done. These are, for example, the symptoms that are seen in some COVID patients. That is how it appears. So therefore, if you have these symptoms, get tested for COVID. You may have it, or very likely to have it. So even in our when people enter here, isn't it? There are those mentions of, have you been having fever or cough and cold and all such things in last 14 days and so forth. Why? Because this is how the symptoms, when you see similar symptoms, then you see that, well, the same thing is likely to be there. The mistake is, the same symptoms could be appearing because of various reasons you don't know. Right now, that is the problem that we are facing, in this sense that whether to see that it is a commonly known flu or it is COVID, because the symptoms could be similar. And thus, those symptoms that appeared on Sri Ramakrishna's body could be the symptoms of a physical pathology or symptoms of insanity. The mental imbalance could be there. So, that is, those symptoms could indicate that, but those very symptoms could indicate something very different. And that is why I told many times that joke about an apprentice. He used to go with a very expert physician of olden times, and they were both going together. And this teacher saw that a man was sitting there very depressed because the camel that he was carrying in that desert was moaning and was almost thought that he will die now. What has happened to this camel? Was not able to eat anything, drink water. What is happening? So this doctor saw and went near that, and this man narrated that this is happening. He examined the camel and saw that, okay, he told his apprentice and the other guy to hold the camel on both sides tight, and then he ran from a distance and gave a big kick on the neck of that camel, and a big coconut came out. And the camel felt so relieved. Now this apprentice watched this. Okay, now I have learned. I don't need to now become an apprentice. I can start my independent practice. So now you can imagine, a man came to him that, okay, my throat is swollen, I am not able to swallow anything. Okay, hey, hold him. That would have been probably the end of that person's life. Because the same symptoms could be indicative of something very different, and very different treatment is also needed for that. So, Bhairavi could relate it to similar symptoms described in the scriptures when they were describing Radha, when they were describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now it is rare because such beings are rare. Like some diseases are so rare that it is they usually get missed. And only after some trial error, this is not working, then they, okay, this is a rare condition. And now incarnations of God are after all rare. In many hundreds of years, you get one such. So therefore, the symptoms have been described very rarely, and but she was well versed in the scriptures, so she was sure. Now she said, how can I convince you guys who have not studied these things? You may not like to believe or want to believe what I am saying. Then bring those who are scholars in this field and also who have been known as spiritual practitioners, well versed in that. Get them, and then I will prove my point to them. It is so. It was getting decided that such a meeting would be arranged to discuss this, because otherwise this is going on and on, the treatments are not working, all those different oils which are being given, they are not working, different these medications, they are not working. And Brahmani, they came to believe Brahmani because her treatments could cure Sri Ramakrishna's that horrible burning sensation in his body. So they were all unusual treatments not mentioned in medical annals. So therefore, when they saw that worked, after all the question is that works. Many times even in the medical science, it is reverse, that if a treatment works, then you see that they decide that must have been the disease, because the treatment for that disease worked. So that is how it sometimes transpires, because there is not very easy way to diagnose, like the many these treatments, there is like tuberculosis is a disease. It is very elusive, means the diagnosis is not very easy. So there are many different parameters and so forth. So could be and may not be, who knows. There are some very well, the symptoms are very well developed, and it is that tuberculosis. And then there are some very hazy X-ray suggestions and other symptoms which could be, maybe, may not be. So it is like cough. Now you treat the cough with medications, antibiotics and all the regular antibiotics, not getting cured. It is then, okay, let us try some tubercular medications. It could be TB. And then they give you something like rifampicin and all that, and then, oh, voila, the patient is getting cured. So it must be TB. Got it? So that is how the diagnosis gets made. So they decided that, okay, now there is some sense, because the treatment that Brahmani suggested worked. So her words can be taken more seriously. So Mathur Babu decided that the Brahmani should be brought there. During these times, many unusual occurrences were seen in Sri Ramakrishna's personality. His body would change, the appearance would change. We saw, therefore, those instances were described, that his very unusual hunger would overtake him. Normally, even a little, most bland food also would be difficult for him to digest. But sometimes he would then ask for huge quantity of some heavy, difficult to digest food, and he would eat it without any problem, digestion problem coming out of it. It is, they were so scared. Oh, this Sri Ramakrishna ate such that a sweet made out of this cream and difficult to digest and huge quantity, that he ate all of that condensed cream. But nothing happened. Similarly, some such incidents they have been given here. We read a few of them. So the point is that his body was all made of thought. It is as the thought changes, the body changes. In common people also it happens, but the power of our thought is not so much to change the body to that extent. We are all more glued to body. Common person is rather the body changes the thought. The physical conditions seem to change the thought. But like a person gets physically sick, the mind also gets sick. It is because the body in this situation says, confined, no, don't go out, don't travel, don't come in contact with people. All these very valid restrictions have been put. But it has an impact on psyche. People feel kind of stifled emotionally because now the body is restricted. Mind is not restricted. But because the body is restricted and mind is under the influence of body, so the mind also feels that impact. Now come to Sri Ramakrishna. It is aligned correctly as it should have been. The thought governing the body. And so as the thought current changes, similar changes would be seen in the body. That has been observed by so many people. It is, and we have seen many examples, we will be seeing more such examples, that the body would change. In ordinary people we see a little expression of it. That if a person gets a very good news, gets elated, and so you can see that in the eyes of that person, on the face of that person, in the movements of that person, the energy kind of comes out. A person that is otherwise lying depressed in the bed and say feeling that I have no money to buy my meals now, what should I be doing? Oh, and how am I going to pay the mortgage? All the worries are causing a depressive influence on even the face of that person. Is lying down and then not wanting to do anything because of that depression. Gets the news. You won the lottery. You are now having $5 million. The things change, It happens so much. The expressions change so much. If you see in a football game, on the TV, they show it on the TV. In actual stadium, you may not see that, but the TV cameras, they want to capture these moments. How the fans respond, how their faces change as the current of the game changes. You see that reflected on the faces of the fans. That if suppose the team that you are fan of is losing, is probably going to just lose this match and thereby may not get to Super Bowl at all, and the depressing face, And somebody suddenly from their team, out of nowhere, uh, uh, the quarterback makes a wonderful throw and the catcher catches it, runs, and that's it. Oh wow! We are having this now. We are moving forward. We are going to win. Immediately the face changes. Now the thoughts are changing, the facial appearance, the reactions on the body. But with Sri Ramakrishna, it used to be so powerful that not heard of in regular society as such. Because with Sri Ramakrishna, thought is far more powerful. And that is how it should be. So, let us continue read the narrative a little more, that some say, this is from page 535, that we read last time that how this body, this phenomena is difficult to understand and hard to believe, but we actually witness the proof of these kinds of changes in aforesaid events, which were common in Master's astonishing life. This is not once in a blue moon. This is something, a daily occurrence. That is, and the author has actually seen this by his own eyes, not he alone, but so many people around. So now, let us continue how this meeting of scholars was getting arranged. Some say that it was from Bhairavi Brahmani that Mathur first came to know about Vaishnavacharan, a great Vaishnava scholar and highly respected spiritual teacher in that sect, that it is Vaishnavacharan. Mathur decided to invite him to ascertain whether Master's spiritual experiences were associated with physical disease. Some days later, Vaishnavacharan arrived at Dakshineshwar. We can assume that a small meeting of Pandits was held on that day. Some aspirants and Pandits must have accompanied Vaishnavacharan as usual, and the learned Brahmani and Mathur's party were also assembled to evaluate the Master's conditions. So we can call this a meeting. The discussion began. The Brahmani described everything that she had heard about the Master from others and that she had seen for herself. She then referred to the experiences of the great teachers of the devotional path in ancient times, which were recorded in the scriptures, and compared them with the Master's present condition. She concluded that his state was the same as theirs. Addressing Vaishnavacharan, she said, "If you hold a different opinion on this matter, please explain to me why you do so." As a mother stands heroically to protect her child, so the Brahmani came forward to defend the Master as if she were endowed with some divine power. And what of the Master? the one for whom all this commotion was going on. We can picture him relaxed. This is based on what Sri Ramakrishna himself told about it later, that he was just listening to their conversation as if it is happening, somebody else is being discussed. See how much we are conscious about ourselves. Ourselves, our name and so forth. That is why many times I call the name of somebody in the audience when I see that that person is not paying attention, naturally, so it is, or rather drowsy, sleepy. Then when I call, hey, so do you understand Juhi? Then she immediately, oh, okay, because you become so conscious of it. You are there. It is said, there is a psychological experiment done on this, that photographs of this same, a group photo shown to people, it is automatic that one tries to focus on where I am in that picture. That becomes the focus of it, that how do I look in that my picture. It is the common problem that we all have. Sri Ramakrishna had no such thing. All those who have been in Sri Ramakrishna company have seen him every day, every moment, seen him walking, talking, going to number one, number two, all that, and saw that he is not at all that self-conscious about, I am, and that prominence has to come to me. No, it is a very special case. So Sri Ramakrishna had himself said about this meeting, and this conclusion is based on that you can picture Sri Ramakrishna sitting there in a corner, that it is relaxed, seated in the midst of the scholars, debating about him, smiling and enjoying the bliss of his own self. See, in the courtroom, if say a plaintiff, a defender, or whosoever, the discussion going on about that person, how intensely that person is listening to that and getting affected by that. Sri Ramakrishna, as if it is about somebody else, no concern about it. So, as if they were talking about someone else, perhaps he touched Vaishnavacharan and described his condition, saying, "Look, this happened to me." Some say that subtle insights developed from sadhana allowed Vaishnavacharan to recognize the master as a great soul at first sight. In any case, the master told us that Vaishnavacharan listened to the Brahmani and heartily approved what she said about the master's condition. Not only that, the Pandit also remarked with amazement that according to the devotional scriptures, Mahabhava consists of 19 main spiritual modes which so far had been manifested only in Radha and Chaitanya. Now all those signs were visible in Master. If anyone were fortunate enough to get a glimpse of Mahabhava, at most only one or two of these 19 signs would appear in that person. In the past, no human body had been capable of withstanding the indomitable force of these 19 moods, and this state of affairs would continue in the future according to the scriptures. Mathur and the others were dumbfounded by Vaishnavacharan's comments. The childlike master said to Mathur with joy and surprise, "Ah, what does he say? At any rate, I am glad to hear that I have not a disease after all." So that was, see, where a person would go, incarnation of God. Somebody is being not in just gesture, that joke or in jest, but actually those who understood this thing, they were saying that here is the incarnation of God. Even if somebody tells me, "Swami, you give good lecture," I feel, hey. But here, Sri Ramakrishna is being spoken of by these, and they were not somebody who doesn't know about it. Those who have studied these things, they are saying this. And still Sri Ramakrishna is, okay, at least I know that there is no disease. As far as this meeting goes, it confirms that. So, that is that greatness, imagine, what a great heart it must be. In a small little puddle, throw a small pebble and the water gets disturbed. It is the mud from the bottom comes up. In a huge lake, like say Lake Michigan, even if a few elephants enter, you don't see much of a disturbance there. A few huge ships go through it. That is common for that. So Sri Ramakrishna's awareness was so huge that common people, a little praise or blame makes them topsy-turvy. Praise makes them so elated. And put a little blame, that also disturbs them so much, upset and angry. For Sri Ramakrishna, nothing would be affecting that. So it's a huge, in some these scriptures, therefore such awareness is compared to like Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, that is like a big fish in enormous water. That water is not getting disturbed by that. So it is like that. As that is how you can see this discussion came to that. And then only arguments can't really convince. The arguments and intellectually accepting something does not generate a conviction. It can alter the intellectual belief at most, if at all. You get dumbfounded maybe, in the sense that you have no argument left to refute it. But that does not convince a person. I had told some funny examples of this, that it is you have the person who is not trained in argumentation and all, would get confused how to answer it. But that does not change the conviction. Outside our college, there would be, the one old lady used to sit with some these berries to sell. These berries, that berries. Say, just for example, say blackberries and strawberries and blueberries, and so the rate would be just same. So the kids would pick up some, and then some kids once thought that let us have a little fun with her. That it is okay. This berries, okay, a quarter, a bowl full, okay. And so took a quarter full of strawberries, and then asked, what's the price of these blueberries? Same price. Okay, take this back, give me the blueberries. And then he took the blueberries, started walking, and the lady, hey, my quarter, money. For what? No, it is you took buying you took the blueberries, going for the blueberries. Give money for the blueberries. Oh, I gave you the blackberries and took the blueberries. Why pay for the blueberries? And the old lady said, then okay, pay for the blackberries. Whereas I don't have the blackberries, why should I pay for the blackberries? I don't take blackberries. I haven't taken blackberries. Why should I pay for it? The lady could not argue with these intellectuals, but she was convinced that she has to have her quarter. So she wouldn't let these people go. The argument, she could not reply to the argument. But she was not convinced by the arguments. That is what happens. Some very well skilled and intelligent person makes arguments. And then you don't have that expertise to answer. But that does not mean that generates conviction. Just arguments of Bhairavi and others wouldn't convince somebody to come to the conclusion of such tremendous importance, significance. Something else was happening. It was Sri Ramakrishna's presence there, an extraordinary presence. That was making all that. Therefore this is mentioned, that Vaishnavacharan's comments regarding the master's condition were not superficial. From that time on, his love and respect for the master increased. That is how, this is the result of conviction. That your behavior changes. Intellectual conviction does not change the behavior. Intellectual understanding, it does not generate any conviction. Intellectual understanding therefore does not change behavior. There are so many intellectual non-dualists. America has been flooded with those that they know all about Advaita. I am the self. That is all that it means. Okay, anything in the behavior changed? No, the same pursuit of sense enjoyments and money that is going on, but they have one more reason to boast their superiority, that they have studied something from Upanishads, they have heard And you can always throw big names, you know. Ah, yes, look, Raman Maharshi says says this. Uh, uh, so it is very easy, but that does not change actual life. In Vaishnavacharan, you can see that a change in life, and that doesn't happen just by intellectual exercise. One has to dwell deeper, has to go deeper to get the life altered. So that is what is mentioned here, that it is from that time on, his love and respect for the master increased. He visited Dakshineshwar frequently to enjoy the company of the master, sought the master's opinion regarding his own esoteric sadhanas, and sometimes brought the master to visit the fellow spiritual aspirants who followed the same path, so that they could be acquainted with the master and be blessed like he was. So this is how the change happened. And not this cannot happen just by arguments. He accepted what he actually saw, not just arguments. And that is, we shall continue this discussion, this extraordinary part. You know, we will now see the other similar scholar coming there. We will have to wait till next Tuesday for it. And so we will meditate on this for 30 seconds. And then if you have any questions, you are welcome to ask. Yes, please. Any question? Uh,
When Thakur was unconscious and fed by a monk for 6 months, was that before or after when Bhairavi Brahmani came?
it is after that. That was afterwards. That happened after Sri Ramakrishna had almost that finished all this sadhana time, and then he was merged in that consciousness of non-dual experience for 6 months. It happened like that at that time. Yeah, this was after Bhairavi Brahmani and Vaishnavacharan and Totapuri. All after that, that happened. Yeah. Okay. Any question here? We shall conclude with the closing prayers. Okay.
From Sucheta Gauri, was Sri Ramakrishna was also knowing that he was avatar at that time?
At that time, well, difficult to say whether, but we don't have, the utterances of Sri Ramakrishna at that time were not recorded. So we do not, I am sure that he knew it at that time, but there is no evidence like he later on he said so many times, and that has been heard by so many people, that the one who was Rama, who was Krishna, is Ramakrishna in this body. But The time that we are discussing right now, Sri Ramakrishna was not a much known figure. His utterances, these disciples like Swami Saradananda or M, they had not come there at that time. So we do not have a verbal evidence of whether Sri Ramakrishna knew it or not. But I am sure that Sri Ramakrishna knew it. Yeah, although he might not have verbalized it, at least there is no record of this. Yeah. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahur Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.